Welcome back to Sportz Blitz Live. Luke Robinson here with the Bradberry Medical Center Alabama Minute. Joined right now by a very special guest, Shane Youngblood from BamaOnline.com. How you doing today, Shane?
I'm doing great, Luke. How about yourself?
Doing fantastic. Thanks so much for being with us on the Bradberry Medical Center Alabama Minute. Let's talk about what everybody's talking about right now, and that's recruiting. Alabama had a huge weekend last week, and probably the biggest name that was there among several big names was Clowney. What's Alabama's status with him right now, and do they have any shot of pulling him out of the state of South Carolina?
Well, they definitely got a shot. Alabama really did a great job with him and his family, particularly his family this weekend. I think the kid himself, he already liked Alabama, and I think the kids like that. I mean, when he's as close to a can't-miss NFL guy as you can get. I mean, what he's thinking about is long term. He's, I'm going to go somewhere. I'm probably going to play 3 years. I'm going to play in the NFL, and whether it's, whether this is sort of a pessimistic view or not, is he sitting down going, which school has the prettiest dorm rooms and which school has the best, study hall facilities? I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe the parents will look at that a little bit, but I mean, he's a kid that at the end of the day, I think is looking for a place where he can go and win championships or compete for championships, and the best place will prepare him for the NFL. Now, I think he could probably go to, Central Alabama Community College and still make the pros the way the way he looks and his upside and his game. But at the end of the day, they made a good impression on him. I think the key was to convince his mother that it's Alabama to South Point, South Carolina is not a world away. I mean, it's probably a day's drive, 7-8 hour drive, and it's not impossible to get to and from home and the games. I think when he left this weekend, I think Alabama set really high on his list, and they probably still do sit very high on his list. But what Alabama's got to, what their enemy is and what they're facing is when he gets back. Does reality set in? Is he talking to his friends and his, other family members and coaches and whatnot, and they're saying, hey, you can't do this to us. You got to stay here. You got to represent the state. You got to stay close to home. I mean, and that's what Alabama's facing, and you face that with every big time out of state prospect. I mean, every time you recruit some guy like this, and you're going to recruit very few like him, but I'm talking top 20, 30 rivals 100 type guys. When you go out of state, you usually sell them on something special. Something there's something that would cause you to uproot and go leave your home base and go out of state. Some kids are different, and they want to kind of get away and feel their way around, and they got friends they want to get, they want to leave behind at home. But I think in his case, I think he's got a tight knit family and group of friends, and it's going to be a battle. I think what Alabama did is they went from being probably a long shot to being in the thick of it, and they, at the very least, they got a shot.
Well, that's good, but Alabama has certainly been left at the altar a few times from South Carolina with C.C. Whitlock and Stephon Gilmore. They also have been able to wrangle John Fulton, who came in last year's class. So maybe Alabama's able to pull another guy from the South Carolina area, and not just any other guy. Clowney, unanimous #1 high school recruit in the country from every service that I've seen. And the only time that I've seen anybody even get close to Clowney is another guy named Cyrus Quandro, whose brother, Ari Quandro, of course, is on the Alabama team right this minute. Tell me what's going on with Cyrus.
Yeah, Cyrus, you got to wonder how serious he's taken the whole recruiting evaluation process when he's taken 2 official visits. One was in New Mexico, and I'm going to go out on a very short limb and say he's not going to New Mexico. His other visit was to Alabama. He has 3 visits left. There's 2 recruiting weekends. He didn't go anywhere this past weekend. He's not going anywhere the next weekend. That leaves him with 1 visit and a handful of schools to choose from. I think Iowa's one, Auburn's the other, and then I think USC maybe the other. That tells you how unserious I'm really considering his other options. But in his case, and when I talk to people about what are our chances with this guy, you always look at the obvious who's your obvious competition? Like Dick Kroll, if you're an Alabama fan, Georgia is your obvious competition. So what does he think about Georgia? And, you can go on with Clowney, his obvious competition. South Carolina, with Cyrus, there is no obvious competition. It's Alabama and a handful of schools he's toying around with, or sort of, and I think the whole effort he's putting into this process should show, it should be just a glaring, a very glaring sign that Alabama's in extremely good shape with him. If I think there's anything to worry about, he'd be going on a visit every weekend. He'd be going to one place more than once, which he hasn't, as far as I know. I mean, I think he's been to New Mexico a couple of times, and I just think he's one of those kids that kind of march to the beat their drummer, and he liked going to New Mexico, liked their coaches. Probably went camping or whatever you do in New Mexico, go look at rock formations or whatever, and had a really good time. And I think that at the end of the day, there was very little doubt what he's probably going to do, and that's fine with Alabama. Now, could something happen? Sure. I'm not anticipating it. I wouldn't count on anything else happening with him. But again, it's recruiting, and nobody thought Brent Calloway was going to decommit from Alabama and commit to Auburn a couple weekends ago. So we'll see. But I think Alabama's in good shape there.
Okay, you brought up Brent Calloway. What's going on with him, and is there a chance that he flips back to Alabama? There is a lot of rumor out there right now regarding Brent Calloway. I know he made a big fuss about switching to Auburn at the Army All-American game, but now there's talk that he may be heading back to committing towards Alabama, and I think I saw a report that his coach, Coach Goodwin, is leaving to go to Homewood. Is that correct? Do you know anything about that?
I think I heard that last night, he's whatever you think about him personally. I know Alabama fans probably don't think much of him personally because he's an Auburn guy, and I think that he was probably happy that Brent went to decide to go to Auburn. But he's a good coach, and Homewood obviously would be probably a step up in exposure and pay and all that good stuff. So as far as Brent himself, he's been sort of quiet since all this went down, and he should be quiet. I mean, he should kind of let things die down. I don't know what happened at the end of the day to make him make that change. I do think that the opportunity probably to play running back had a bigger factor in that than most people believe. I think that Auburn probably said, look, we've got Michael Dyer. He's a certain kind of running back. We need a bigger back. We need a guy who's more of a between the tackles, a guy a little leaner, a little different look, and you're going to get plenty of carries. And Michael's only going to be here one more year after this year, or whatever they told him. I think that he probably felt like that was a more genuine opportunity to play running back than at Alabama, where he probably has zero opportunity to play running back. I mean, they've got Trent Richardson, they've got Eddie Lacy, they're bringing in D. Hart. They're going to recruit. They may get Kroll, they may get some other guys. I think that he looked at it and said, I probably got a better shot at Auburn. And this kid, talking to this kid, I've talked to this kid 100 times, since the recruiting process started. He genuinely wants to play running back, and he likes the offensive side of the ball. And I think it just hasn't clicked yet that, as far as his ceiling is much higher on the defensive side of the ball. He's got a defensive frame. He's lean. He can run. He can cover ground. He's got a big wingspan. And I think at the end of the day, he's going to be a guy that's going to fill out and be an outside linebacker, or he's going to stay roughly where he's at and be a strong safety type. But I don't see him being a running back. You don't see a lot of running backs 6'2", 6'2.5", whatever he is, that are in the NFL, playing running back, with the exception of Brandon Jacobs, who weighs about 285 pounds and a little different level than Brent. So we'll see what happens. Right now, I think I would not sleep on Alabama, but at this point, nothing would shock me.